That is up there. Okay, let's do that one. That is up there. Okay, let's do that one. No, that's wrong. That is up there. Okay. I've already got there anyway. No, that's wrong. That is up there. Okay. I've already got there anyway. No, that's wrong. That is up there. Okay. I've already got there anyway. Okay. That is up there. I've already got there anyway. Okay. That is up there. So I've already got that. We got that. That is up there. So I've already got that. We got that. Playlist. I've already got that. We got that. Playlist. I've already got that. We got that. Skelelo. I've already got that. We got that. Skelelo. I've already got that. That is Thursday, April 30th. That is Thursday, April 30th. That is capitalized. Alright. That is capitalized. That one capitalized. That one capitalized. That one. Oh, there's. Oh boy, I can't copy any of those out. Bad day. That one. Oh, there's. Oh boy, I can't copy any of those out. Bad day. Okay. Oh, there's. Oh boy, I can't copy any of those out. Bad day. Okay. Oh, there's. Oh boy, I can't copy some URLs. Copy some URLs. Friday, 8th. Copy some URLs. Friday, 8th. Copy some URLs. Friday, 8th. Copy some URLs. Friday. Okay. You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay. What? You're hearing an echo. That's the kind of feedback that I need. Okay, so I turned the default mic back on. And okay, so I turned the default mic back on. Sound to none. And okay, so I turned the default mic back on. Sound. Okay. I just made some change. I made more changes. I have turned my regular microphone back on, and I can see that bar jumping. I've shut off system sounds, set the default speaker to none. Okay, so I will save all of that. I don't need to save. Save presentation works. I'll call it solo for 2020. All right. Thank you both for your feedback. That was helpful. And we'll get that over there. All right, so got that up there. Go over my notes again. I have some notes. Excellent, excellent. So how are you all doing? What changes has your schedule made? I'll get the microphone closer to my face. That never hurts. So Stacy, you're in Minnesota, and Fred, you're in Indiana, correct? How are things going in those two locations? So what all does lockdown entail for you? So I can't remember where Minnesota fits in all this, but I know that Iowa's been getting a lot of criticism for not having an official lockdown thing going on. But I feel like we're doing all that stuff without calling it a lockdown. So I'm just curious what it means for you guys. It's a very real fear, Stacy. I hate to see that. And while we're off the record, this is not regular podcast stuff. It's been interesting to me to watch the protesting against the lockdowns and the protesting against the protestings of the lockdown and all of that. And there seems to be there's some obvious excuse me. Political noise going on in the background, but it seems mostly from the outside that people who are protesting the shelter in place, the lockdowns and all of that, are people that are suffering greatly from the lockdown, businesses going out of business, or people who can't go to work and are staring down the barrel of financial ruin, things like that. And so those folks are suffering greatly from it, and their fear and their concern is very valid. It also seems to be that group is not any place where the virus has really hit. So you don't see a lot of people in New York City or Seattle or New Orleans or San Francisco protesting the lockdown because they have seen the devastation that this thing has. So there seems to be, perspective on that. On the other side, you see the people that are protesting those protesters, and it is people much like myself whose career and financial situation has not really been upended, certainly not yet, maybe in the future, but for the most part, not worried about food, shelter, all that kind of stuff. And you've also been seeing like the medical folks protesting the protesters, and clearly those folks have seen the devastation of all of this just firsthand. It's just got to be physically and emotionally just grueling and draining. And also they're not worried about their jobs necessarily because that's one of the people that have been keeping busy. So it's interesting to see the different perspectives come in. And that's one thing I always try to keep in mind whenever my first reaction to something is, what idiot thought, protesting against lockdowns was a good idea or whatever. I sort of ask myself, what is their perspective? And it's almost always something like that. They're well-meaning people who just don't want their families to starve to death and haven't had to face the stark reality of what this thing's doing. So it's been interesting to sit back and people watch. And now that Mark's back, now we can actually start this whole mess. So didn't mean to get political or anything like that on y'all, but it's been interesting to watch. I've enjoyed the psychology of it all. It's been fun to watch. All right, so we're going to get started. All right, I got a bit of a quorum. I'll check Twitter, see if anybody's got. No, we got some live watchers. Hello to everybody out on YouTube, all of you. Okay, we will start time's about 12 minutes. Okay. Visual cue for the editor when he gets this done. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Todd's Cloudy Podcast, number Note Safe 455, recorded live April 22nd, 2020. I, of course, am your host, Todd Clint. And I forgot to take my reading glasses off before I started this thing. For those of you watching the video, you get to see me sporting my very stylish $3 Walgreens readers that I use at my computer. And since the glare doesn't seem to be that bad and it helps me see my notes better, I might just leave them on. We'll see. So speaking of notes, if you would like the notes, any of the stuff that I'm talking about, the links that I share, don't try to scribble them down while you're driving to work. Oh, wait, nobody's commuting anymore. But you don't need to worry about this. You can go to toddclint.com/podcast455, and you'll have all the notes and all the links and all the information that I talk about here. You'll also have a link so you can listen to it over and over again. Send it to your friends. Send it to your enemies. It doesn't matter. If you're watching this on YouTube, I also have a YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/toddclintnetcast. And every week I stream live there, and then I put the shows up afterwards. You can hit the subscribe button. See, I watch a lot of YouTube videos now. Everybody's like, hit subscribe, ring the bell, circle the wagons, do whatever. So now I feel like I need to do that. I feel like I'm negligent in my YouTubing. But you can also go out there. You can hit subscribe and do all that kind of stuff. You don't miss out on any of this podcasting goodness that's going on. All right, so production. So for the first time in as long as I can remember, I'm all caught up. I got all the podcasts. Like I got up this morning, and normally there's this weight of unproduced podcasts that weighs down on me, and today it's not there. I finished the last one up a few days ago, so I'm all caught up. Of course, I'll be behind again here in about an hour when this one's finished, but they're all caught up, all 454. I remember months ago Shane was talking about how there would be these lost podcasts that no one had ever seen. Every single one of them made it out, so they're there. In other production notes, sadder production notes, again, for those of you watching the video on YouTube or using the video RSS stream, you will notice that my quarantine hair has gotten worse. Not only did I need a haircut before all of this happened, and it's against the law to get a haircut now, so I can't get one, but I ran out of gel. Things have gotten dire, folks. It's really gotten bad here at the Clint household. So I normally use the fancy Paul Mitchell styling gel that my friend Phil Oster got me 100 years ago, and I've got addicted to, and I just haven't gotten out and gotten any. And yesterday, the last little blop came out, and I got no more gel, so I'm going to have to buy some hats, apparently, is what's going to happen. So I'll be all stylish now like the kids these days, wearing a beanie, something like that. You can look forward to that in future podcasts. So I'm kind of enjoying this. The last time I let my hair grow out, I was about 12 years old. And I was growing up, I listened to, the hair metal, heavy metal, all of my musical gods had long hair, and I wanted to be cool like them. I wanted to be cool like anybody. That's a goal that I've never, that's been always out of reach for me. But I let my hair grow out. It was absolutely atrocious. It was terrible. My hair does not lend itself well to that. And so this is my opportunity to let that happen again, just to see if it's any better now, 35 years later, and probably not so far, not looking like it. But I'm glad that I have this legitimate reason to let it grow out and just see how it looks. Now, Mark in the chat room is talking about how he just shaved his head. Certainly, I did that. I was in the Army for 9 years, and very used to having a shaved head or close to it, cutting my own hair, owned clippers, cut my own hair for a very long time. Could do that. The problem with that is it's tough to come back from. So if I don't decide to just shave it forever, then there's that awkward phase where it grows out. And I've got some nasty colics and some really ugly spots in my hair that have sweet spots. And so if I shave it all down, then not only do I have to wait for it to grow out, but those are going to hit their uncomfortable patches at different cadences, and it would be ugly. But this is just a fun social experiment. I've also got my quarantine beard coming in nicely. Yes, Fred, you probably haven't cut your hair since the last time I didn't cut my hair when I was 12. For those of you that haven't met Fred in person, she's got very long, incredibly long hair. And yes. So that's now that you guys are all up to speed on my personal hygiene, let's talk a little bit about Office 365. So one of the things, so it's been a couple of weeks since I did the podcast, and one of the things that came out a while back was that Office 365 was getting renamed to Microsoft 365, and they've been threatening to do that for a while, and they finally made good on that a while back. And part of that is that they're kind of removing the Office 365 brand from everything. And so our friends with Microsoft Groups or with Office 365 Groups have also been renamed to Microsoft 365 Groups. Now, I'm not a big fan of the rename of anything Office to Microsoft. I get why they're doing it because they're working in Windows 10 and all those things into it, so it makes sense to call it Microsoft 365. But honestly, I much prefer the Office 365 nomenclature, and for just a ton of reasons. One of the things when I work with customers and we do migrations and onboarding and all of that, I always, I've got this whole spiel that I talk about where I tell people just to go to office.com and that's how you should start your day and all that. It tells a better story. So I don't know what the Microsoft 365 version is going to be of that. We don't call it Office 365 anymore. It's Microsoft 365, but start your day by going to office.com. It's clunky. I don't like it. And on top of that, I really don't like the change from Office 365 Groups to Microsoft 365 Groups. That kind of makes sense because they are Azure Active Directory principles and all of that, but nobody asked me. They, Satya didn't return any of my calls when I offered my feedback on that. So just know that we're in a clumsy period here where some things are going to be called Office 365 and some are going to be called Microsoft 365. It will take a while for me to get used to that. Again, I don't like it, so I don't want to do it. I don't want to make the change, and changing's tough anyway. But Office 365 groups, the things inside of Office 365 when you create a team or a site or whatever, they will now be called Microsoft 365. On the heels of that, Microsoft 365 is both the business product that I deal with a lot, but it's also the home product. There has always been an Office 365 Home or Family Edition. I actually use that myself. The Office 365 Home is like an individual thing, and it's like $7 a month or $70 a year, something like that. And it gets you Word, Excel, all the Office apps, and OneDrive storage, a terabyte or something like that. I don't remember all the specifics. But there's a much better deal. You can get Microsoft 365 Family, where you get all of that, but you get it for 5 or 6 people, and it's $100 a year. So $100 a year across 6 people, and you get Word, Excel, all those things. You get a Teams chat thing with that. You get a terabyte of storage in each of your OneDrive accounts. It's a pretty good deal. So the reason I bring that up is because the family version of Microsoft 365, the Microsoft 365 for consumers, that has launched, and I've always been a fan of that. So if you've got a deal where, and they're not tricky about the family bit, so if you've got in-laws that need Office and OneDrive and things like that, if you're like me where you end up doing the IT support for your close family, having all of their stuff sync into OneDrive is just a thing of beauty, and for $100 a year, you can do it. If you know anybody who can get cheaper licenses, I know Microsoft has a friends and family discount. You can talk to them. It's just a code, so they can just send it to you. I use it. I've got years piled up into that, but I'm a big fan of that, but that is launched out and all of that. Mark said in the chat room using it, he says it is 6 people. So 6 people. So for me, it's like me, my wife, a couple of my kids, in-laws, all that. Great product. But that's out. That's launched following all that. Another topic that has come up a lot is working from home, because we're all working from home. Those of us that are fortunate still have something to do. And there have just been a ton of different resources that have come out for that. And I wanted to mention some of my favorites. I can't mention them all because there's just too many. I just don't have time in the day between watching my heavy metal videos on YouTube and all of that. I just don't have time to watch all these videos and read all these articles. But Bob German, who, if you're not already going to his blog, it's bob1german.com. Bob, longtime friend, fan of the podcast, I'm sure. Hi, Bob. He has worked all over as a consultant. I think he's at Microsoft now. Just a brilliant guy and just one of the nicest damn people you're ever going to meet. He's a great guy. And you should just hang on every word that Bob says, because it's all gold, every bit of it. And so he's got this series out about working from home that talks about kind of the Microsoft perspective, and that's a really good thing. So I got notes to that, list of that, links to that in the show notes, and it's kind of a playlist. So some of the videos that he's been watching and things like that, and people to follow. Again, Bob is a great resource. You can do a lot worse than listening to what Bob has to say. So I wanted to shout that out. Another thing that is going on, another resource for those of us that are working from home or are supporting people that work from home, is a new Microsoft 365 webcast series. And it is being hosted by Stephen Rose, one of my favorite people at Microsoft. I first met Stephen when he was on the OneDrive team and doing some things with that. But now he's moved into the Microsoft 365 field, and he's doing this podcast or this webcast series on remote work with Microsoft 365. Already one of them has happened. One of them happened last week. One of them is happening in about 45 minutes, happening today. The good news is I think they'll probably all be, you'll be able to watch them offline, but there's going to be 5 of them. The last one's going to be in May. So if you go to the link in the show notes here on Tech Community, you can join those. Stephen is really smart. So Stephen's a fun combination of things. He's really smart, obviously knows the technology very well, very engaging person. He's very engaging just one-on-one, but he's got a very engaging personality when he's presenting and he's up on stage and all of that. And he is a very interesting person. He's not always been a tech nerd. So like myself and other people, we've lived the tech lifestyle forever. Stephen has not. He's had a lot of great experiences and fun things in TV and movies, things like that. He was actually in a movie, probably a movie that you've all seen, or at least people my age have seen. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'll give you some homework to figure out what movie that was. But Stephen's just a really interesting guy. So if you're going to be doing supporting remote workers or anything like that, check out this Enabling Microsoft 365 webcast series. Again, one of them starts in 45 minutes. So if you're in the chat, you can grab that link. One of the things that helps enable Microsoft 365 for remote workers is custom backgrounds. Now, it's been interesting to me. I've been working from home for more than a decade at this point and have been using video conferencing software for that long. And it's been awesome to see how well it has progressed. It's gotten a lot better in the 10 years, obviously, but it's gotten a whole lot better in the last 2 or 3 years. And in the last couple of months, there has just been a fever pitch in improving the software because everybody's using it now. So it's not just nerds like me complaining about it. It is accountants like my wife. It is everything. So we've all seen, I think we've talked about on the podcast a little bit, some of the travails that Zoom has had. They came out of nowhere for a lot of folks. And we've seen their security issues and some of the other funny things that have happened with Zoom meetings. They've been the poster child for this. Zoom, for the most part, has risen to the challenge, and they've been upfront. They've admitted they had some security errors. They've gotten a lot of those fixed. One of the updates to Zoom, the change notes was like reading. If you would have gone to your favorite news aggregator and searched for Zoom and looked at all the things that people were complaining about, the change notes was almost word for word, all of those things. So it's funny, but it's also heartening that they take that very seriously. So Zoom has improved a lot. But Teams kind of came out of nowhere as well. And I don't have the numbers in front of me with how much Teams adoption has changed, but it's been like 7-fold or something from a couple of months ago. And Teams, those of you who've listened to me talk or listened to the podcast know that Teams and I have had a tumultuous relationship, to say the least. It's growing on me. They're fixing a lot of the things that I don't like. They've also just beaten me down in a lot of these things. I've just decided to move to forgiveness, to move to acceptance. But they have continued to improve some things. And one of the things they did a while back was allow you to blur your background, which was handy. But then again, it was mostly just people like me. It was just nerds that were using Teams for video conferencing. Well, now everybody's working from home, and not everybody has the luxury of having a dedicated workspace, because 2 months ago, they didn't expect to have to work from home. And then 1 month ago, they were told that it was law that they had to work from home. And there's just a lot of scrambling there. So people have ended up having to set up their workspaces in unconventional spots, kitchen tables and all that kind of thing. And the other thing is, since nobody can see each other in person anymore, a lot of companies have put a lot more emphasis on video calls. And there's, some people think it's better, some people think it's worse. It's not an easy thing, but we can all agree that more people do video conferencing than they used to. So what's in your background and what's going on in your house is now a big deal, because you might not be able to just have a dedicated background like I've got. And, you just don't have that luxury. So being able to blur backgrounds was really helpful. But here we got Zoom again, and Zoom for forever has allowed you to have these fun, cutesy little custom backgrounds. And so once people who had been using Teams started using Zooms, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, how come I can't have an aquarium behind me? How come I can't be swimming at the fishes or something like that? What the heck, Microsoft? So Microsoft opened that functionality up in Teams. And it's kind of working out in phases, because not only are people making huge demands on the product, the functionality, those kind of things, but they're also making huge demands on the service that's providing that product. So Microsoft has got a lot of things going on, a lot of balls in the air. But they've been doing a good job of moving things out. So they have started rolling out the custom backgrounds. It's supposed to arrive in May, and it's a tenant by tenant thing. So check your tenant. Ours rolled out here a couple of weeks ago. And so now, in the same place in the Teams client where you would enable the blur from a few months ago, a year ago, now you can go in and there's a settings in there, and you can control how the custom backgrounds look, so you don't have to use the whatever's in your house. Now, it's odd because they only have a subset of them. So there's 7 or 8 that they add that you can do. So that fixes the immediate problem of how do I make it so people aren't judging me by the books on my bookshelf, or the mess behind me, the dirty laundry and all that. fixes that immediate need. But the very first thing that everybody wanted was, they wanted their own custom backgrounds, the fun, cutesy things and all of that. But that wasn't there. There's no place in that interface that says, browse for picture, upload picture, or anything like that. So fortunately, though, with nerds, with nothing else to do, lots of time on our hands and all of that, Tony Redmond posted an article about this on Petri.com about how you can put your own custom backgrounds in. And essentially what Tony and a billion other people on the internet found out was that set of 7 or 8 backgrounds that come with Teams is in a specific directory. And if you drop any picture in that directory, poof, like magic, it shows up as your picker in there. So again, there's a link to that article in the show notes. But you can, if you go on Windows 10, and this is assuming everything is in the default location, but if you go to C users and then pick your username, so for me, like C users Todd, and then app data roaming, and that's called the roaming, your roaming profile. Then go into Microsoft Teams backgrounds uploads, and if you go there, you will see all of the pictures that Microsoft has provided, and then if you just drop your own in there, then it will show up in the Teams client. So I like that. And one of the things that I've seen pushback from, especially from people like myself who've used Zoom and knew about this functionality and it's old hat, we get this sense of superiority, like, oh, I see everybody's playing with custom backgrounds now, flapping our gums and all that. Yes, it's a little annoying. People take it a little too far. But it does a couple of things. Number one, it does ease the pressure on people who don't have a dedicated work environment yet. So it allows them to set some of those backgrounds up and maybe, not feel quite so obvious about it. When you're not seeing your coworkers in the office, you miss out on a lot of the human interaction. You end up falling into this rut where the only conversations you ever have with people ever are about work things. I can't figure this PowerShell script out. Why is this down? Blah, blah, blah. And when you're doing your video calls, that's all you do. And so having these dumb, annoying custom backgrounds is a fun way to keep the people part of your coworkers involved. Before all this happened, I think it was before all this happened, I read an article somewhere on one of the sites, Medium or whatever, about ways to handle a remote workforce. And one of the things that this person, the author, suggested was dedicating the first 5 minutes to every team call, every video call. Dedicate that first 5 minutes to non-work subjects. Talking about work is forbidden in the first 5 minutes of every meeting. Now, that might be a little extreme and all that, but the point was to remember those relationships, to keep those things up. Talk about your favorite local sports team, talk about, what your kids are doing, talk about the paint drying, whatever. But remind yourself that those people on the other end of the call are people. They're not just resources for work. I'm a fan of that. Now, I'm a pretty social person, so working from home feels a little lonely sometimes, so I enjoy that kind of interaction. But definitely, when you get on calls, there are people that get anxious about that. Well, those idle chit chat or just whatever. Yes, it is not getting any work done, but it does have business value. It is, strengthening those relationships and that kind of thing. And so I think the custom backgrounds and all of that is a good way to be a catalyst for those kind of discussions. One of the things that I did to be funny was I moved myself and my chair out of my shot here. So this is the webcam that I use when I'm doing when I'm doing video conferences with my company. I took everything out and I took a picture. So I used the Windows camera and took a picture of my webcam and uploaded it for my company. So now anybody at Sympraxis can have a meeting in my office. So it's not uncommon when the 6 of us have meetings. 3 or 4 of us will have the very same backgrounds because everybody's in my office having a meeting because they've used that as a custom background. The other thing that's fun with that is I have 2 webcams hooked up to my computer right now. And if you set that custom background, that's per meeting, that's not per webcam. So if I have that custom background of my own office set behind me, when I'm in a meeting, so you get a little bit of fuzziness around my head and all that. But if I go into Teams and I switch my camera to my other camera, which right now is pointing outside into my backyard, if I switch to that camera, Teams switches to that camera, it keeps that same custom background, and then it looks at that picture and it says, hey, are there any humans in that picture? And there's not. So what ends up happening is I just disappear in my meeting. It's like I've been teleported out. And then if I switch back to this webcam, then poof, I just appear right back in my office. So that was fun. I had some fun with that at a meeting, just making myself just disappear, poof, vanish. Another fun one, and I don't have a link for it, unfortunately. Vesa Juvonen, one of the senior product managers at Microsoft, uses XSplit, so the same software that I use here, and has made a custom thing where he's got a video playing in the background that he recorded of his office. So he did a similar thing. He had started recording a video and then walked into his own office, kind of looked startled, looked and saw that the webcam was on, and then grabbed a bottle of water and kind of scurried out. But he's got it on a fairly long loop at several minutes. So I was in a meeting with him. I recognized his office, everything looked fine, and then he snuck into his own office during his meeting and grabbed something and walked out. And it took like 2 or 3 loops for me to realize what was going on. So we've got all these fun things now because all of these different things create these virtual cameras that we can use in Teams. I have Logitech webcams, and there is some management software that comes with that called Logi Capture, and that will do some of those things as well. So I can fire up Logi Capture and I can put borders or subtitles or whatever, and I can do custom backgrounds and a bunch of other things. And then that shows up as a virtual camera. So then when I go into Teams or XSplit or whatever, Zoom, doesn't matter, I pick that as the camera, and then I can manipulate the image off to the side. So I've really enjoyed watching this technology grow, and it's grown in leaps and bounds in the last couple of months. So if you've got Teams, check out the custom backgrounds, read Tony's article so you can see where that location is, and then have fun doing the uploads to your own directory. One other thing that has come up from all of this is, again, the beginning of February, nobody worked from home. The beginning of March, the middle of March, everybody worked from home. And one of the things that there's been a run on is webcams. Now, those of you that have been watching the podcast for a while know that I'm a hoarder, and I hoard webcams. I legitimately, within arm's reach here, I believe that I have 3 webcams that I could touch. And then there's the one hanging out the window, and then probably one in a drawer. I've got one that watches my 3D printer. I am awash in webcams. I am good. I've been stockpiling webcams for years. I am set. But for those of you that don't have my hoarder tendencies, it can be tough to get a webcam. So that's another one of the challenges. All of a sudden you got to work from home. You got to do these meetings. All you got is the crappy little webcam on your laptop or whatever. And so that has been tough for people. I've thought about selling some of my webcams, profiteering off of this, paying for my children's college. I would say I would sell my webcams and go tour the world, but I can't leave my house or my state or anything, so I can't do any of that. But one of the things that has popped up recently that I've been aware of is the proliferation of apps that let you use the camera on a cell phone as a Windows camera. So much like the Logi Capture software is software that exposes itself as a camera inside of Windows, there is the same for the webcam on your phone. So I've got some software. I've got Android phones. So there's a million of these things out there that do this, but the one that I got recommended to me by a friend was Droid Cam. So you go to the Play Store, download Droid Cam, run it on your phone, pick which camera you want to use and all that kind of stuff because you're got your front and back cameras, all that. And then there's an app that you run on the Windows box. You give it the IP address of your phone, so your phone's got to be on the same network. And then, poof, you just have a camera in Windows that is the camera on your cell phone, and then you can use that in Zoom or Teams or whatever. Sorry about that. I muted when I swallowed. So I don't know where I ended off on that. So anyway, I got this web, creates the video from your phone into the app on Windows, and you've got that. everybody. So I muted my mic so that I could clear my throat, and I didn't get a mute back on. Everybody in the chat room thought they all went deaf, which is nope. It's me. So Droid Cam runs on Windows. There's a little tweaking I can do, but now that virtual camera is exposed to all my Windows apps, Teams, Zoom, whatever, and I can use that when I do video conferences. And I've got a mount that I use that will hold a cell phone that mounts onto a tripod, so it's got the little screw and all that. I've used that for podcasting. I've got a short little tripod that I use for lights and all of that. I can set that on. So you could just set it on your desk and have it look like a regular webcam. I know a lot of news personalities that are now, those news folks that are having to record their stuff from home, they use something similar, use their webcams. When I first heard about this, though, the person that was using it, I'm like, well, how does that work? Because I need my phone when I'm doing stuff, and I don't want my phone to be monopolized by my camera and all of that. But then it occurred to me, and as I open up my desk drawer here, I have about 1,000 old Android phones that I'm not using anymore. And I'm not using them for a variety of reasons. For instance, one or both of these LG Android phones, they're 3 or 4 years old. The headphone jack doesn't work on one, and the screen's buggered up on another one. I forget. But I'm not using these things as phones. They're just they're literally collecting dust in the drawer of my desk. So one of these would be a great little webcam that I could use on my. We'll take that out in post. That I could use on my computer and just set up forever. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one that has iPhones or Android phones laying around. The other fun thing about this software is even if you don't want to use it as a virtual camera, most of them have IP cam endpoints. So you can just point a browser at it. So if you wanted to set one up in your garage or your backyard or whatever, you just power it up, get it on your network, start the software, and you're off to the races. So I thought this was a really great way to repurpose some of our old cell phones. Again, I've clearly got a ton of them sitting around here. So in this time when we can't find webcams and we got phones sitting around and we got nothing but time to figure things out, I thought that was a pretty nice little thing. So Mark in the chat room's talking about some other things that he's using. Looks like Devin is already using Droid Cam. Awesome. So there's all these great apps. So I've got another phone that I'm using somewhere that is just a controller for my lights. So I've got a bunch of Philips Hue lights. And of course I can control it from my regular phone that's sitting on a dock, and I can use my Amazon device, whose name I shall not say. But I've also just got a phone sitting on a mount that has just always got that app up, and I can control all that. You guys have seen my blog post on the lights that I've got running around my basement door to discourage my children from coming downstairs. That's also an app I could just have running on a phone somewhere mounted. Just have power to it, have it on the network, and be there. So there's a lot of great uses for those old phones, and this whole everybody works from home now has definitely made people think about some of those new solutions. So check that out. If you're using anything else, I would be curious to hear what software you're using, how it works, because I think we're going to be needing more of that stuff. Finally, and I don't have a lot of time because I don't have much stuff put together. For the last 3 or 4 podcasts, I've had a lot of PowerShell notes that I wanted to mention, and they just have never made the cut. They're like Matt Damon on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. They just, sorry, ran out of time. Sorry to PowerShell. But I wanted to mention a few things. PowerShell 7 came out here a couple of months ago. If you haven't already done that, check that out. The bad news is that none of the cloud modules work with Office 365 yet. I believe exactly 0 of the Office 365 modules that I use on a daily basis will work in PowerShell 7, Azure the same way. So that's the bad news. The good news is that you can have PowerShell 7 and Windows PowerShell 5 installed at the same time on a machine. I do. So I can have PowerShell 7 out there, playing with that, learning the new functionality of that, and all the while continue to be productive, or as productive as ever with Office 365 and the Windows PowerShell 5 bit. So if you haven't installed PowerShell 7 already, please do that. It's pretty great. And again, it's not going to break anything you've got going on. You can have them installed side by side without any trouble. Another thing that I've started doing that has helped that transition a little bit is last year, June-ish, I believe, Microsoft released Windows Terminal. Windows Terminal Preview. It's an app in the App Store that you can install. And it kind of takes the place of the old conhost.exe maybe seen that in Task Manager. But it is now a single app that is tabbed that you can have multiple instances of consoles in or terminals in. So obviously PowerShell, but you can also have the command prompt in there. The Azure Cloud Shell is another one of my favorites that I run in there, but it's great in that it's a single application, so you don't have a million PowerShell windows open. If you don't want them, you can run it and whatever. But this whole PowerShell 7 and PowerShell 5 thing makes it really easy because I can have the terminal open and I can click a thing, create a new PowerShell 5, 7, whatever, and it's just all in there. The title bars show up and you can set the Windows title in that the same way you do in regular PowerShell, so you can keep track of them. I love how they integrate the Azure Cloud Shell. So if you open up an Azure Cloud Shell, it gives you the link to authorize it, and then it dumps you right into Azure. Have really been playing with that. Now, a couple of not so great points about the Windows terminal. There's a ton of settings and features and all of that. And if you go into the little tab, there's a settings link and you're like, oh, that's awesome. The problem is right now there's no interface for that. So all of the settings are in a JSON file. So you have to open up your favorite editor and start plucking away at JSON. And I mean, something as simple as I want to change my font size from 14 to 16. You get to edit JSON. And so that's kind of clunky. There's a lot of resources out there for that, but it's, man, I just miss, because I do presentations. So when I'm typing on my laptop, the text is one size, but if I'm sharing my screen, I want to make it easier for people to read. I want to make it another side, and that's very tough. The other thing, and it came up almost immediately in the chat room, is that since it's an App Store app, the elevated command prompt thing, it gets complicated. You can't have elevated prompts like, if you right click on PowerShell, there's run as administrator. I have not. So as soon as I realized that issue, I just went, well, to heck with it. I'll just run a regular PowerShell window. Brody in the chat room, Mark in the chat room is saying that you can open that app as administrator. I've never tried, honestly. So when I've got it open right now, yeah, I don't see a way to do that. But that is one thing. If you do a lot of things when you need local admin, the terminal might not be the best for those. But I'm really enjoying the tabbed interface. I find myself during the day having a PowerShell window open for specific tasks. One of the habits that I've gotten into, I wrote a function called start TK transcript, and that transcript starts the transcript, obviously. It also takes a value of title, and it will set the title bar in that window. So I use that to keep track of different tasks. So I might, set TK transcript, title customer 1, title customer 2, title renaming MP3s, whatever. And I have a window open for whatever task that I'm doing. The other thing that transcript has is it has a path parameter. So I have all of my transcripts for a customer and the PowerShell I do for them in one folder, and customer 2, whatever. So I, start TK transcript, title, customer 1, fiddling around, path, D : customer 1 logs, whatever. And so I have those all over on my taskbar. And I've got a couple of monitors, so there's plenty of room, but I've definitely found that there are groups of those that lend themselves well to the terminal. So I will just have those tabs up there, use a transcript. So Mark is saying if you have the terminal pinned to the start menu, right click on the icon, then right click. Okay. So I've got it on the taskbar right now. And if I right click on it, I don't get the option to run as administrator like I do with the PowerShell ones. I've not looked in the start menu. This will make for great podcasting. Let's go ahead and try it. Oh yeah. So if you do it in the start menu, you do have run as administrator. So there you go. But it doesn't show up in the taskbar. I do a lot in PowerShell. Obviously, it's, my interface of choice. So check the terminal out. It's kind of where things are going. It's very nice. You can also have custom backgrounds on that. You can do a lot of fun things. I know there have been, at Ignite last year, Jason and Jeff Snover did a great presentation on the terminal and all that. A lot of fun stuff there. So definitely try that one out. And the final thing I wanted to say about PowerShell is that I have definitely moved over several months ago to using Visual Studio Code, VS Code, to write all of my PowerShell. I don't run PowerShell in VS Code very often, but I definitely write it in VS Code. VS Code has a couple of advantages. Number one, it is where Microsoft is developing all the new PowerShell creation things. So if you're still using the ISE is going to continue to be there, going to continue to work, but it's not going to get a lot of new love. So using PowerShell and VS Code is where all the cool stuff's at. There is an extension for PowerShell, in VS Code that gives you all the highlighting and the coloring, the syntax checking. It also includes the PowerShell script analyzer. So as you're writing your PowerShell, it tells you if you use where instead of where object, it yells at you, glowers at you and shakes its finger. Some of those kind of things. I've definitely cleaned up a lot of my PowerShell, my lazy coding, because of the PS script analyzer in there. Also, if you do any kind of code repository, Git or Azure DevOps or anything, that's all wedged in there too. So you can write your PowerShell in a great editor, check it in. Your coworkers can enjoy it. So it's really good. The learning curve's a little steep, but it's worth it. I struggled a little bit with it the first few months, but I couldn't imagine doing PowerShell in anything other than VS Code. So check that out. So now we actually have some things to promote, some events. Of course, every live event for the next coming months has been canceled, and so that got a little weak. But people are starting to step up with some online events. The first one, my friends at Simpraxis, my coworkers, they have started a bi-weekly, I believe, thing called Ask Simpraxis. And a bunch of you folks from the podcast were there last time. Thank you for that. There was some good conversation. We're doing another one today, and it is going to be about guest access, I believe, and how to some best practices and answer your questions about guest access in Microsoft 365. So if you go to Simpraxis, OneNote's not showing me the URL here. If you go to simpraxisconsulting.com, there's going to be links in there for it. But again, we're doing these every other week, so just go ahead, sign up for it, join in. It's pretty loose. We host it in teams. Most of us are there, depending on what customer obligations we have. But that's just a great opportunity to just have somebody to bounce ideas off of, ask questions. Those are a lot of fun. We get to see some fun stuff. I'm going to be doing a couple of events myself. One of those is next Thursday, April 30th, and this is something the SysKit folks have put on. Now, I didn't want to really bring a lot of attention to this, but you'll notice the SysKit sign is up and not crooked or anything like that. Yep, all the corners are down. I hate to brag. I'm a big fan. I'm using the 3M, what are these called? Command strips or whatever. They're sticky on both sides. I'm a big fan of those. So SysKit's putting on an all things Microsoft Teams, and they're putting on like a little online seminar thing next Thursday. So from 8 to noon Eastern time here in the U.S., which puts it, in the afternoon, something in Europe. They're doing this thing. They've got 4 or 5 speakers, of which I am lucky to be one. And it's just going to be different aspects of Teams. So I'm going to start off on some kind of low-level things for the reluctant or surprised Teams administrator, things that you're not used to paying attention to if you didn't have time to roll Teams out, with the planning and all of that, because all of a sudden your company had to work from home. Going to cover a bunch of those things. I know Sue Hanley's going to be in there talking about some governance things. Otis is going to be in there talking about real live smart admin things for Teams. And it's a free webinar. So if you go to syskit.com, there's a link across the top. There's a banner. You can sign up for it. It's going to be free. A lot of fun. So that is Thursday, April 30th, and it starts at 8 a.m. Eastern. And I'm going to have a blog post on that. And there's Twitter and all that kind of stuff, but love to see you there. I'm looking forward to that. And in the chat room, the folks are like, "What? You're doing a session on Teams?" Yeah, it's becoming unavoidable for me, Mark. And then I was getting a lot of questions from customers. Questions where I set SharePoint up for them or set other Office 365 things up, and now they suddenly are thrust into Teams and like, "What is this scary Teams thing? We weren't going to roll this out till second quarter of 2023 and." Now we're 2 weeks in. So that's, I've been pulled into that. The next event that I'm going to be participating in is Office 365 Friday for Nashville. And that is Friday, May 8th. And you can go to, I think if you go to office365nashville.com or .org or whatever, you can also just go into Google and do it. That'll give you the whole thing. Another free event. Friday, May 8th, they have picked a session that I do on site designs, on site scripts, and I will be presenting that and doing whatever else I can. I can't get coffee for anybody or those kind of things because it's all virtual, but Daniel Glenn put all that together, and I'm very excited about that. So hopefully you'll join me for that. And that gives me the opportunity to say that there's a lot of these online events, which has really opened up the things that I can do. And I really don't have the excuse not to do them because they're mostly virtual. So if you've got one of these events coming up and you need more speakers and you're really desperate and you've asked all of the good people and you still need speakers, hit me up. I'm on Twitter at Todd Clint. Email me at Simpraxis or whatever. But I'm happy to join in, help out however I can. We're all in this together. And if I can show up and make your other speakers look better, I'm happy to do it. So don't be a stranger. Well, everybody, I got to go get prepped. Find something to use for gel for the whole Ask Simpraxis thing we've got coming up here in a few minutes. But thanks, everybody. Chat room's been very lively. Thanks to you all. Hope you're all doing well. So one thing completely off topic. Mark Chrisman, longtime listener, good friend. He is from the New York area, and I was just watching a show on Netflix called Hyperdrive. Watching a lot of Netflix lately. It's filmed in an area that he's familiar with. A lot of fun. So watch it. It's basically these tricked out cars, and they're having to do these crazy stunts that just seems like no car should ever do it. It's kind of like a real life Fast and Furious. But I looked up where they filmed this ridiculous amusement park for gearheads, and it was in Rochester, New York. So that's Mark's old stomping grounds. But if you're bored, like loud, flashy things, Hyperdrive on Netflix brought me a lot of entertainment. My kids liked it. It was fun. So check that out. Think of Mark Chrisman when you watch it. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next week or in a couple of weeks. We'll see what the schedules are like. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, hit me up on Twitter. And again, toddclint.com/podcast455. Thanks, everybody. See you in a couple of weeks. All right. Well, thanks. I thought I'd give you a shout out at the end there, Mark. A fun little show. And I did want to say, so a bunch of you guys, Fred and Mark, and I can't remember who else was there, showing up for the Ask Simpraxis thing last time. That was pretty cool. I definitely appreciate that. I made a good showing. And it was fun to say to my coworkers, see that boondoggle you think I'm doing where I do the podcast? These people are genuine people. They care. They're showing up. So I was very proud to have you all there representing. I appreciate that. So I am going to go do some prep. I don't know if I can do anything with my hair. But thanks, everybody. And hopefully see you in a week or two. I've been trying to wrangle Mark to get into these, but he's all busy with customer work and all that. But hopefully we'll get somebody back in. Thanks, everybody. See you later.